Welcome to the Funeral Channel Network's Deep Dive. I'm so glad you could join us today because we have a really fascinating topic to unpack.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is it's a really profound subject we're looking at today.
It really is. So to start, I want you, the listener, to just kind of imagine something with me for a
Okay.
second. You are sitting in a quiet, dimly lit room.
Right, like a church sanctuary.
Exactly. Or maybe a funeral home with those heavy velvet curtains.
Hmm.
And you are holding a traditional funeral prayer card.
We all know exactly the object you're talking about.
Right. It's that small rectangular piece of really heavy cardstock.
Yeah, usually laminated.
Yes, you can run your thumb over that glossy lamination, and on one side, there's a photograph.
Usually a bit faded,
Yeah, or maybe it's awkwardly cropped from, I don't know, a Thanksgiving family gathering.
just because it was the only recent photo where they were actually smiling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That happens all the time. And then on the other side of this card, there is a poem or a short scripture verse.
Hmm.
It is a beautiful physical token of remembrance.
Yeah.
And I mean, humanity has used variations of these mourning cards for generations, right?
Oh, absolutely. Dating way back to Victorian times even.
But if you look closely at that physical object in your hand, its space is strictly mathematically limited.
Very little.
You get maybe, what, 3 or 4 square inches to summarize an entire human life?
It's fundamentally a medium defined by its physical boundaries.
Right.
I mean, whoever is designing that card is basically forced into the role of this aggressive, almost ruthless editor of a person's legacy.
That's a great way to put it, an editor.
Yeah, because you are distilling decades of, joy, complexity, inside jokes, failures, triumphs.
An entire personality.
Exactly. You're distilling all of that into 50 words and a single, static, two-dimensional image.
Which is wild when you think about it.
It is. I mean, it provides comfort because it's tangible, right? You can slip it into your wallet.
Or use it as a bookmark.
Exactly. But as a historical document of a life, it is incredibly restrictive.
Right, I'm looking at this prayer card in my mind, and mathematically, summing up 80 years in 3 square inches, it feels impossible.
Because it is impossible.
It's a snapshot,
Yeah.
a closed book. You read the poem, you look at the face, and that is just kind of the end of the transaction.
Right.
But what if that small, finite piece of paper wasn't the end of the story?
Now, that is the real question.
Right, like what if that tiny piece of cardstock held an entire living, breathing legacy?
Which brings us to today's topic.
Exactly. Today, our deep dive is venturing into a concept known as digital eternity.
A fascinating term.
It really is. We are unpacking source material titled Digital Eternity, integrating QR codes into funeral prayer cards.
And this is based largely on the work being done by the funeral program site, right?
Yes, exactly. So our mission today is to explore exactly how these very traditional tactile keepsakes are evolving, how they're turning into dynamic digital storytelling gateways.
Which is a huge shift in the industry.
It is. We are going to look at what this profound shift means for the future of how we process grief and, how we curate the memory of the people we love.
And that limitation of the physical card that you just mentioned, that is exactly what platforms like the funeral program site are trying to solve.
Right.
Our source material heavily highlights their innovations in this space. They are essentially acting as a pioneer here.
And being the way.
Yeah, they're providing the actual architecture to bridge that massive gap between the physical limitations of a piece of paper and the, expansive, virtually limitless potential of online legacies.
It's like merging 2 different worlds.
Exactly. The core premise here is that integrating a QR code into a prayer card merges the printed keepsake with dynamic digital storytelling.
So it's not just a piece of paper anymore.
No, not at all. Remembrance is no longer confined to a single moment frozen in ink. It can grow, it can evolve.
And it remains accessible for generations.
Precisely.
Okay, let's unpack this a little bit. Traditionally, the prayer card was the monument.
Right.
It was like a tiny statue.
Yeah.
You look at it, and that is all it does. It just stands there.
Static, unchanging.
Yes. But with this integration, the card fundamentally changes its purpose. It becomes a doorway or a key.
I love that analogy, a key.
Right. It is a physical object that you hold in your hand, but its primary function is no longer just to be looked at. Its function is to unlock an interactive universe.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, if we look at the psychology of memorialization, this represents a massive paradigm shift.
How so?
Well, think about the fundamental human need when it comes to grief. We have an innate psychological desire for an evolving narrative.
Okay, an evolving narrative.
Yeah. When someone passes away, our relationship with them doesn't actually end.
That's so true. It changes, but it doesn't end.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The dynamic changes, the communication changes, but the psychological bond remains active.
Right, you still talk to them in your head.
Exactly. But historically, our tools for remembrance have been entirely static.
Like a headstone.
Yes, a granite headstone does not change. A printed photograph does not change. But human memory and human grief are incredibly fluid.
So we've basically been trying to process a fluid, ever-changing emotion using entirely rigid, unchanging tools.
Precisely the problem. And the text emphasizes that this integration transforms the prayer card into a living memorial.
The living memorial.
Yeah. What is happening here is that the technology is finally catching up to the psychological reality of grief.
Oh, wow. That makes so much sense.
We are acknowledging that because grief isn't static, the tools we use to remember, honor, and interact with the memory of the departed shouldn't be static either.
Right.
The artifact should continue to offer new layers of connection because the survivor's need for connection continues to fluctuate over time.
So the relationship continues, so the artifact should continue to offer new things.
Exactly.
I love that framework. But let's look at the physical reality of the card itself for a second.
Okay, the actual design.
Yeah. The concept of a digital gateway is beautiful in theory. Limitless space, infinite memories, a fluid narrative.
It sounds great.
It does. But to make it work, that physical key, the QR code printed on the card, has to be executed flawlessly.
Right. It can't just be an afterthought.
No, you can't just slap a supermarket barcode on a delicate, highly emotional memorial item without, destroying the solemnity of the object.
Absolutely not.
And the source material gets incredibly specific about this physical design aspect.
It does. The underlying principle in the text is that the technology must be completely subservient to the aesthetic and emotional tone of the object.
Subservient. I like that word.
Yeah, the QR code has to be noticeable enough that people know to use it, but it cannot disrupt the visual harmony of a solemn keepsake.
It's a tricky balance.
Very. The source outlines strict design and functional requirements to maintain this balance.
Right. It mentions very specific placements. Like, you obviously aren't putting a geometric barcode right over the deceased person's face.
No, that would be terrible.
Yeah. So the common placements recommended are the back of the card, perhaps tucked neatly into a lower corner, or within a very specific dedicated section that separates the traditional from the technological.
It needs its own space.
Exactly. And there's a strong emphasis on a clear call to action. You can't just leave a mysterious, unexplained square floating on the page.
Right. People need to know what it is.
Yeah, it needs a label. Something like Scan to View Life Tribute, along with simple instructions.
Because you have to remember the audience.
Exactly. The audience here might include older relatives who aren't, scanning QR codes to pull up menus at trendy restaurants every day.
Right. My grandmother's not going to know what a blank QR code is for.
Exactly.
But beyond the placement and the instructions, the physical properties of the code are heavily regulated by the environment it will be used in.
Right, the actual printing of it.
Yeah, the text requires high contrast for the code to function. It explicitly states that black on a white or light background provides optimal readability.
Which makes sense for scanning.
Now, it does allow for what it calls subtle creative expression.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, designers can incorporate small icons in the center of the code or gently align the data modules with the color scheme of the card.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be just a harsh black square.
Right, provided they don't break that fundamental contrast rule.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting, and I have to push back a little on the premise here.
Okay, go for it.
We are talking about an object of deep mourning. Isn't a digital barcode visually jarring on a solemn, emotional keepsake?
I see what you mean.
Right. Like, no matter how you color coordinate it or tuck it in the corner, a QR code is a piece of stark, modern, machine-readable geometry.
It's a piece of tech.
Yeah, it's hard, sharp pixels. Doesn't that intrinsically clash with the flowing script, the soft floral borders, the muted watercolors?
The general softness of traditional stationery.
Exactly. The general softness we naturally associate with funeral stationery. There seems to be a real, unavoidable tension between technological utility and traditional aesthetics.
It is a totally valid concern, and what's fascinating here is how the source material addresses that exact tension.
How so?
Well, it doesn't ignore the clash. Instead, it leans heavily into the environmental and functional realities of a funeral to justify the design choices.
Okay, explain that.
We have to analyze the user experience, the UX of grief.
The UX of grief, wow.
Yeah. In software design, you design for the user's state of mind. The environmental factors of a memorial service completely dictate how this technology must be deployed.
That's interesting.
Picture the lighting for a second. A dimly lit church nave, a solemn funeral parlor with shaded lamps, or a cloudy graveside service under a tent.
It's rarely bright and sunny.
Exactly. The text points out that low-light environments are the absolute standard for these events.
Oh, that completely reframes it for me. I was looking at this as a purely aesthetic problem, but you're saying it's actually an operational problem in a high-stress environment.
Exactly. Consider the physical and cognitive state of the user.
Right, the grieving person.
Yes. A grieving person whose hands might be shaking from adrenaline or sorrow.
Who might be crying.
Right, whose eyes might be filled with tears. Their cognitive load is entirely maxed out by the trauma of the day.
They are not in a state to be troubleshooting tech.
Exactly. They do not have the emotional bandwidth to struggle with a piece of technology. They hold up their phone and the code won't scan because it's too small or the colors blend together.
It's just going to be incredibly frustrating.
The resulting frustration is catastrophic in that setting. You do not want to trigger technological rage at a funeral.
No, that is the absolute last emotion you want to introduce into that space.
Right.
So the starkness of the code isn't a design flaw at all.
No, it's a functional necessity.
But it is an engineered necessity.
Okay, exactly. The text mandates a minimum size constraint of 0.8 to 1 inch.
That's pretty specific.
It is, and that is not an arbitrary number pulled out of thin air. That specific size, combined with high contrast, allows the optical CMOS sensors of a standard smartphone camera to lock onto the pattern's position detection squares.
Those three big squares in the corners of a QR code.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It allows the sensor to lock onto them almost instantly.
Even in low light.
Yes, it allows the phone's lens to find focus in poor lighting without requiring the user to perfectly stabilize a shaking hand.
That is so thoughtful.
It really is. This is also why the text highlights a critical step.
Yeah.
Rigorous testing on multiple smartphones before the final printing.
Oh, to make absolutely sure it works.
Right. Platforms like the funeral program site offer specific templates and guidance to navigate this exact physical constraint.
They walk you through it.
Yeah. When you view these rules through the lens of the environment, the 0.8 to 1 inch rule, the stark contrast, and the pre-testing aren't just technical specifications.
What are they?
They are profound acts of empathy for the attendees. You are designing a frictionless experience to prevent frustration in someone who is already suffering.
An engineered piece of empathy. I love that so much.
It really changes how you look at that little square.
It does. It is designed to work so seamlessly, so instantly, that the technology essentially becomes invisible and only the emotional connection remains.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's say we've done it. We've successfully designed this perfect, highly scannable, empathetic key.
Okay.
The guest is sitting in the pew, they hold their phone up, and the code scans instantly. A link drops down on their screen. What exactly happens when they open that door?
That's where things get really expansive.
Right, the focus shifts entirely from the physical card to the digital destination.
Yes, and the source material is clear that this digital destination is where the true depth of the tribute unfolds.
We leave the 3 square inches behind.
Exactly. We are moving from the constraints of that cardstock to what is essentially an infinitely expandable digital canvas.
So what's on this canvas?
The online memorial pages can host an incredible array of content that a piece of paper never could.
The text outlines high-resolution photo collections. And we aren't talking about one grainy wallet-sized thumbnail here.
No, not at all.
We are talking about entire curated albums spanning a person's entire lifetime.
Hundreds of photos if you want.
Right. Video montages of family vacations, long-form written tributes where colleagues or distant friends can share extensive, multi-paragraph stories that would never, ever fit in a standard eulogy.
Exactly. You don't have time for that during a service.
No. And interactive guest books where visitors can leave their own messages of condolence right from their phones in real time.
It's very interactive.
But the part of the text that really stopped me in my tracks was the emphasis on multi-sensory elements.
Oh, yes. The multisensory capability is where the concept of digital eternity truly earns its name.
What does the text say about that?
The text specifically notes the power of audio and video to create an immersive experience. It mentions linking to favorite songs, spoken tributes from family members, and this is perhaps the most profound capability of all, the actual voice of the departed.
Wow. Hearing their voice.
It also highlights video testimonials, pointing out that video captures facial expressions, micro movements, and the specific light in someone's eyes that are entirely impossible to convey in written text or a still photograph.
So what does this all mean for the person experiencing it? Like, imagine what that actually looks like in practice.
It's incredibly moving.
You go to a service, you take the prayer card home, and you pin it to your refrigerator. Months pass.
Life goes on.
Right. One day, you are making coffee, and you are just missing that person terribly. The absence is just really heavy.
We've all been there.
You scan the card with your phone, and suddenly, you are not just reading a poem, you are hearing your lost loved one's actual voice.
It's immediate.
Yeah. Maybe it's a digitized voicemail where they are just calling to say hello, or maybe it is a video of them telling their favorite completely inappropriate joke.
Right.
You are seeing the exact way their shoulders shook when they laughed. It completely transforms what has historically been a flat two-dimensional experience into this incredibly immersive, multi-sensory connection.
It's very powerful.
It feels like a portal.
The emotional weight of that mechanism is staggering, especially if we look at the cognitive science behind how we process memory.
Oh, cognitive science. Let's get into that.
Well, the text touches upon this by highlighting the qualitative difference between text and sensory input.
Okay, so reading versus hearing.
Yes. Audio and video activate entirely different memory centers in the human brain compared to reading text.
Really?
Yeah. Hearing a voice specifically engages the auditory cortex, which has incredibly deep, rapid neural pathways to the amygdala.
The amygdala, that's the emotional center.
Exactly, the emotional processing center of the brain.
So reading the words, I love you, processes differently than hearing the acoustic sound of the person actually saying, I love you.
Vastly differently. The cadence, the prosody, the tone, the unique vocal timbre of a loved one's voice triggers an immediate, visceral, emotional recall.
That makes total sense.
Reading words on a page simply cannot match that. It bypasses the analytical part of the brain and goes straight to the emotional core.
It just hits you right in the chest.
Exactly. By curating these specific sensory elements, families are no longer just putting together a nice order of service.
What are they doing instead?
They are essentially acting as documentarians of a rich, comprehensive narrative. They are engaging both the heart and the senses of the visitor.
And because it's digital, that documentary doesn't have a release date where it's suddenly finished.
Yeah, it doesn't.
The text points out that this is a living memorial. It can be continuously updated and expanded.
Right, it grows with you.
Like, imagine you find a box of your grandmother's old 8mm tapes 10 years from now in the attic. You get them digitized, and you add them to the destination link.
That's a great example.
The prayer card sitting in your desk drawer 10 years from now will suddenly unlock brand new memories that weren't there yesterday.
The physical object never changes, but the world it points to keeps growing.
It completely redefines the timeline of a memorial, doesn't it?
It does. It ceases to be a one-time localized event that ends when the caterers pack up the reception.
Right.
It becomes an ongoing collaborative archival project that spans generations.
But building an expansive, ever-growing, highly personal digital documentary raises an immediate, glaring practical concern.
Right, privacy issue.
Exactly. Who gets to see it?
Right.
If I am uploading videos of my grandfather's deeply emotional final days in hospice, or an audio clip of a very specific, slightly off-color inside joke between siblings,
Stuff that isn't for everyone.
right, I might not want the entire internet stumbling across it. If this is just a QR code, what stops someone from scanning it and posting it to a public forum? How is this kept safe?
This raises an important question, and the source material explicitly addresses this. Families maintain total granular control to tailor the experience.
Granular control.
Yeah, privacy is a massive consideration in the architecture of these platforms.
How does it work practically?
The text details that families can restrict access to these digital destinations via password protection or private unlisted links.
So you have to have the password.
Exactly. This ensures that personal, highly vulnerable memories are shared strictly with intended audiences.
And I guess on the flip side, if the family wants, they can create entirely public pages to serve as a broader community celebration.
They have that option, yes.
But what if you were intensely private?
That's a fair concern.
Like, what about the listener who believes grief is sacred, intimate, and should absolutely be kept behind closed doors? How do families navigate the very modern fear of putting their deeply personal raw grief out onto the wild west of the internet?
It is a vital question about the nature of digital boundaries in the modern age.
Yeah.
What the text reveals is that the technology itself does not force public exposure. Rather, it offers the tools for what we might call curated intimacy.
Curated intimacy.
Right, you have to separate the concept of the internet from the concept of digital storage.
Oh, that's an important distinction.
You are not broadcasting your grief to a social media feed where it sits next to algorithmically generated advertisements and viral videos.
Right, it's not a public timeline.
No, you are creating a walled garden.
A walled garden of grief.
Exactly. The flexibility of password protection allows families to fiercely protect their vulnerability.
Or you're in control.
You only give the key, whether that's the physical prayer card or the password, to the people you trust to enter that garden.
Right.
It provides the vastness, the multimedia capacity, and the permanence of the digital world, but it maintains the absolute sanctity of a private room.
It makes the technology feel safe. It's not an exposure. It's an enclosure.
That's a great way to put it.
But, the source text doesn't just talk about who is allowed to see the memorial. It talks about who is able to see it.
Yes, the accessibility aspect.
It brings up accessibility in a way that is incredibly profound.
The integration of digital elements massively expands the accessibility of the memorial.
How so?
Well, the text notes that for guests with visual impairments, a traditional printed prayer card is largely inaccessible.
Because they can't see it.
Exactly. It's a piece of paper with small typography that they cannot read and a photograph they cannot see.
Right.
But digital integration fundamentally changes their relationship to the object.
What can they do now?
Those same guests can scan the QR code and use screen readers or native audio playback on their smartphones to experience the content.
Oh, wow. So a visually impaired friend can sit at the service, scan the card, and have their phone quietly read the entire life tribute to them through an earpiece.
Exactly. Or listen to the audio clips of the deceased.
That is so inclusive.
The text points out that this makes the memorial genuinely inclusive and aligns with broader accessibility efforts in the funeral services industry.
Which is so overdue.
It is. Think about it. For hundreds of years, if you couldn't see the tiny print, you were simply left out of that specific part of the mourning ritual.
Yeah, you just didn't get to participate.
Now, the technology bridges that gap entirely.
It is a perfect example of how digital tools can restore dignity and inclusion to physical spaces.
Absolutely.
It ensures that every single attendee, regardless of their physical capabilities, can fully participate in the act of remembrance.
It's powerful.
And this level of control over privacy and over accessibility doesn't just change the event of the funeral.
No, it goes beyond that.
It alters the long-term footprint of a memorial, both environmentally and emotionally.
Very true.
Let's talk about that physical permanence for a second. Because if we are putting all this emotional weight into a digital link, how do we know it actually lasts?
A longevity question?
Yeah. Let's look at the traditional method first. Let's say a family wants to share a lot of photos and stories at a funeral, but they don't have a digital option. What do?
They print something.
Exactly. They print a massive, heavy, 20-page glossy photo booklet for every single guest.
Which is expensive and resource heavy.
And what happens to that booklet? The guest takes it home, it sits on a coffee table for a week, and then, inevitably, it gets packed away.
In a drawer somewhere.
We all have that one box in the attic, the do not throw away because it will curse our family box.
Right, the guilt box.
Yes, it sits there gathering dust. A decade later, the pages are stuck together, the ink is faded, or it just gets lost in a move. The physical reality of printed material is that it decays.
And the source material highlights precisely that limitation. Printed materials are subject to the laws of entropy, they fade, they tear, or they simply get misplaced.
So what's the digital alternative?
The text states that digital tributes are preserved indefinitely.
Through servers and backups.
Yes, through redundant server backups and cloud architecture. They serve as a lasting archive for future generations that is immune to physical degradation.
That's a comfort.
Furthermore, linking to this digital content completely reduces the need to print those heavy, multi-page programs or photo booklets in the first place.
Right, the environmental angle.
The text points out that this aligns seamlessly with eco-friendly sustainability practices. You are replacing pounds of paper, toxic inks, and shipping carbon footprints with a single, highly efficient digital link.
It's the contrast between a physical object that demands storage space and eventually turns into an obligation versus an ever-present, eco-friendly digital sanctuary that literally lives in your pocket.
A sanctuary in your pocket. I like that.
But it's not just about saving trees. The text puts a massive emphasis on the emotional sustainability of this approach.
Yes, it does.
It says this allows guests to revisit memories and heal, quote, at their own pace.
That phrase, at their own pace, is perhaps the most psychologically significant insight in the text.
How so?
If we tie together the environmental sustainability with the emotional sustainability, we see a complete picture.
Okay, walk me through that.
Just as families are reducing physical waste, they are exponentially expanding the runway for emotional processing.
Expanding the runway.
Yes. Grief is notoriously unpredictable. It does not follow a linear schedule.
Definitely not.
It certainly doesn't neatly resolve itself by the time the 45-minute funeral service concludes.
It never does. I mean, it hits you like a tidal wave in the grocery store aisle 3 months later when you see their favorite brand of cereal.
Precisely. And traditional memorial practices often force a compressed timeline of mourning.
Right. You have the wake, the funeral, and then it's over.
You gather, you look at the photos on the display board, you read the card, you listen to the eulogy, and then you leave. Society expects the heavy lifting of grief to be done in that designated window.
Which is just not realistic.
It's not, but allowing people to engage with a comprehensive digital memorial gives them agency over their own mourning process.
Agency, that's a good word for it.
If that wave of grief hits someone at 2 a.m. on a random Tuesday, 6 months after the funeral, they don't have to wait for the one-year anniversary to visit the cemetery.
Right.
They can pull out their phone, scan the card on their nightstand, and instantly be immersed in the comforting presence of their loved one's voice, their photos, the stories of their life.
That is so powerful.
It provides a real-time, on-demand mechanism for comfort and healing that simply did not exist before. It sustains the memory and fosters a sense of ongoing presence precisely when the survivor needs it most.
That 2 a.m. scenario is incredibly powerful. To have that sanctuary available instantly, securely, and privately is a tremendous gift.
It really is.
It changes the prayer card from a passive memento into an active lifeline.
Exactly.
But here is where my mind really starts spinning.
Uh-oh. Where are we going?
Well, if this is what we can achieve right now today, with a simple printed QR code and a standard smartphone, what does the future hold?
Yes.
The future.
Technology doesn't stand still, and the source material doesn't just stop at audio and video, does it? No, it doesn't.
It looks over the horizon at the intersection of memory and emerging technology.
It does look forward. The text clearly states that as technology continues to evolve, the possibilities for QR code integration will expand exponentially alongside it.
What's the next step?
It points to a very specific frontier that is currently developing: augmented reality, or AR.
This concept is wild to me.
It's fascinating.
The text says future developments could include AR experiences where scanning the code brings photos or videos to life in immersive ways.
Pushing the boundaries of how we honor people.
Right. Imagine pointing your phone's camera at the physical prayer card sitting on your kitchen table. You look through your screen, and the photograph on the card doesn't just link to a flat web page.
It physically appears to lift off the paper.
Yes. It becomes a three-dimensional moving memory of the person, right there in the room with you, anchored to the physical card.
It's incredible to picture.
It sounds like science fiction, you know? Like
Yeah.
the moving portraits in a fantasy novel, but the source presents it as the inevitable next step.
And it is not science fiction at all. It is the logical progression of the technology we are already using today.
Really? It feels so far away.
If the ultimate goal is a living memorial, then AR represents the ultimate fulfillment of that concept. To understand how this works, you have to look at the mechanics of spatial computing.
Okay, spatial computing. Break that down for us.
An augmented reality system needs an anchor, a point of reference in the physical world, so it knows where to project the digital image in three-dimensional space.
Right, so it doesn't just float randomly.
Exactly. And the high-contrast geometric patterns of a QR code are the absolute perfect spatial anchors.
Oh, Because the camera can easily track those hard black and white squares regardless of the angle you're holding the phone.
Exactly. The phone's software uses the corners of the QR code to map the plane of the table and then projects the digital artifact, whether that's a 3D model or a volumetric video, directly onto that plane.
That's amazing.
You are no longer navigating away from the physical object to a separate digital space. You are overlaying the digital richness directly onto your physical environment.
It brings them into your room.
The text suggests this pushes the boundaries of how we honor those who have passed. And what is crucial to understand is that the architecture required for AR is exactly what is being built right now.
The infrastructure.
Yes, the scannable trigger, the cloud-based data storage, the smartphone interface resources like the funeral program site are essentially laying the foundational infrastructure today for the immersive, augmented memorials of tomorrow.
Oh, wow. They are training us.
They're training the public to understand that a physical printed object can trigger a digital reality. Once that behavior is normalized, the leap to AR is simply a matter of rendering.
That is a staggering thought. The prayer cards being printed today are essentially the prototype generation of a completely new way humanity will interact with its ancestors.
It's a historical shift.
We're moving from looking at the past through a dusty photo album to almost like stepping into it.
Stepping into the memory. Yes.
Okay, let's take a breath and recap the incredible journey we've just taken through this source material.
It's been a lot of ground to cover.
It really has. We started with a simple, familiar piece of limited paper.
Right.
We explored how thoughtful, deeply empathetic design and precise QR integration are turning those static cards into gateways.
The engineered empathy.
Yes. We talked about how curating multimedia, specifically leveraging the neurological power of audio and video, creates these infinite, living, digital eternities.
Engaging the whole brain.
And we saw how families can make these spaces secure, walled gardens, highly accessible for everyone, and eco-friendly.
All while laying the groundwork for a future of augmented reality.
Exactly.
And for you listening, whether you are in the position of eventually planning a memorial for a loved one or simply attending one in the near future, it is important to recognize what you are looking at when you are handed one of these cards.
It's not just a card.
No. You are not just seeing a clever use of a barcode on a piece of stationery. You are witnessing a profound historical shift in how humanity archives its dead.
A historical shift.
We are actively transitioning from a history written in fading ink and crumbling stone to a history preserved in a dynamic, multisensory digital eternity.
It is a beautiful and heavy realization, and it leaves me with one final lingering question for you, the listener, to mull over.
I'm curious what this is.
We've spent this entire time talking about how our families will curate these digital archives for us when we are gone. We've talked about the architecture of memory.
Right.
But if the prayer cards of tomorrow are becoming gateways to our eternal digital archives, looking at your own digital footprint right now, the photos you take, the voice notes you leave, the stories you share online, what kind of digital eternity are you already building for yourself?
That is a very profound question to leave on.
Next time you hold one of those small glossy cards in your hand, remember, it isn't the end of the story. It is just the doorway. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.